Our next question, Jim, sent via the Cult of Cornette Facebook group by Donnie Howard. Maybe an impossible one to answer, but who started the steel chair to the head spot and where did it originate? And I guess to the bigger topic, it's amazing how many things there are in wrestling that we take as, we take for granted. They're just givens that we have no idea where they really originated.
Well, and there's no way to tell on that one. And then even before steel chairs, there were chairs because you see pictures, from the 30s of the Dusek brothers, the Riot Squad, throwing the announcer's table or a row of ringside chairs in some buildings in the old days. They used to be hooked together, though even the wooden chairs, and it'd be like a row of chairs or they'd have some furniture in the ring, shit that was found around ringside. That kind of wild shit was going on when Toots Mondt invented, what did he call it? Western style slam bang wrestling in the early 30s, which he had seen in Texas when he was working for Cal Farley and the original Dutch Mantel and all of those guys that 20 years before Dory Funk Sr. even moved there. So they were always, especially in smaller markets or out west of places they didn't have an athletic commission, matches got wilder because they wanted to bring the people back and people liked that kind of shit. So there's no way to tell the first wrestler that got whacked over the head with a chair. The steel folding chairs are more modern. Well, I say modern 50s, 60s, device in the arenas that it was easier, actually. It makes noise. A wooden chair doesn't make a lot of noise. And the metal folding chairs, because back in the 30s and 40s, a lot of those chairs in the arenas didn't even fold up. They were just chairs with arms. And guys, you had to figure out a way to hit a guy with it. So the folding chair became easier and more popular, and as at the same time wrestling opened up and got wilder. And
safe bet to say that more than likely a fan tried to use a chair on a wrestler before a wrestler tried to work a chair and use it in a match?
Well, that could be a 50-50, because it would probably be a thing that, a wrestler as of the 20s might have thought of, but when Frank Gotch was wrestling George Hackenschmidt, did any fan who lost money on a bet get mad enough to chase Hackenschmidt with a chair? That might have happened too. So you can't really tell. But the whole thing, it was a natural extension of the atmosphere. If two guys got in a fight or a scuffle and rolled through the ropes and they end up on the announcer's table and they're either slamming each other against it, or they're trying to turn it over on the other guy, or they grab a chair and wing it at the guy. That's just part of the thing. They didn't actually plant the entire, population of a Home Depot under the ring for guys to pull out at various points all through the night.
But in terms of things we don't know the origin of, like blading, that's always been a debated thing. Some people say Danny McShane. Other people say it was happening before then, or someone else did it.
Yeah, and it probably happened out west, maybe in Texas, but there was stories in Tennessee of a guy that had some type of invisible scalpel. Or no, that was Texas. One of the guys had an invisible scalpel that he seemed to slice his opponent with. You can't tell for sure either. And then there was another way of doing it that actually, Troy Graham, the Dream Machine, has even done one of these. I'm pretty sure Ron Wright would do some, Don Fargo. But that goes back to the pioneer days also. Guys would pre-blade themselves. In like hours before the match, they would actually just go and fucking over their eyebrow or whatever. They'd pre-blade a cut, and then they would they'd stop it from bleeding and put the new skin shit on it, right? That the doctors did back in those days.
Yeah.
And then at the appropriate point in the match, they would tell the guy which eyebrow to really fucking punch. and it would open it back up.
I've seen footage from the 80s of guys coming out there with clearly something. I always figured it was something like new skin. I always thought it was just holding something together from like the previous night's match, not setting up the blood for that night's match. That's interesting.
It just depends. It was, and especially if you'd done it the night before, it was easier than getting it again. But see, then a lot of guys that were heavy with the blade, I know we're off topic here, but a lot of guys that were heavy with the blade got so much scar tissue because they would try not to go deep once, but they would go lightly several times. And they'd get the blood, but then they'd have to do it again because it would have scabbed over and grown by the next night, so they'd have to do it every night again. And that way built up a lot. I mean, I'm not talking about Abdullah. He went deep and often. But if you took a lot more of your surface skin off with the light ones, you'd have a lot more scar tissue that would build up over time, whereas a guy that would do it light, just a small one but deep, and it could potentially be used the next night, didn't have as much issue that in some cases. But I digress.
But again, we don't know where it originated from.
No, nobody does.